Hey everyone, it's Les, and this is another episode of Art Making, and it's Comfortable Shoes Studio. I'm working from photos from Earth's World on Instagram. If you haven't checked them out, they take photos at county fairs of regular, everyday rural people, and they do an amazing job at capturing light and shadow on faces. And for me, that makes them a prime source for sketching from. They also allow you to sketch as long as they're credited from their images. So just a great source of imagery to draw from. Thousands and thousands of photos at this point, and they're all fantastic. So in this video, I'm using 3 different materials on a toned page. So the page is toned with mixed media gel sticks, very inexpensive backgrounds, part of my Walmart budget series. I use those, I scribbled on the page, moved that around with water. I also brushed acrylic paint onto bubble wrap and pressed it to the paper, just to give the page a little more interest than it might have otherwise. So great toned page in my opinion. I really like the mixed media gel sticks because they are very light on the page, and everything that I've drawn over the top of them just works really well. They don't create a greasy barrier like some materials will. All right, so I have a topic that I want to talk about, and it's kind of the reason why I do pages like this, which is ballpoint pen, correction pen to capture the highlights, and then a thick black acrylic paint marker. We're talking 15 millimeters wide. Why do I use these materials? Why do I do this again and again and again? Why is this a frequent morning exercise for me? Part of it is that I am continually working. This never stops for me as an artist. I'm continually working on my artist's site. Artist's site is a way of viewing the world, a way of seeing the world in line, color, shape, and tonal values. So this means when I look at the world, I see it differently than my friends who aren't artists. I have lots of friends who are artists in other materials and methods. So they're, music artists, dance artists, poets, and things of that nature. We see the world in a very different manner from one another, because I'm constantly thinking in line, color, shape, tonal value. And I'm thinking in ways of translating what I see in the world to paper. I'm taking 3-dimensional, turning it 2-dimensional, and how do I do that? First, by actively looking and observing the world around me. So I am actively looking for that line, color, shape, and tonal value in the world around me. I'm developing that sense pretty much constantly. And not just when I'm drawing. Sometimes I'm quietly observing the world around me and translating it in my head to all of these things. And that sort of exercise translates to just about anything. It's a transferable skill, this way of seeing the world. They relate to every media I use. It doesn't matter if I'm using a ballpoint pen, a brush pen, watercolor, acrylics, a stick dipped in mud. All of that has this transferable skills of this way of seeing the world around me. I'm also working in a sketchbook like this. I'm working on developing mark making. And I'm not going to cover it here today, but there are lots of different exercises for learning mark making. I'm using pretty basic cross hatching, and I start with pretty much a contour line drawing. It's not a continuous contour line drawing, but it is a contour line drawing. So I'm looking, in this case, like, here's this guy's eyeball. I'm looking at the image of his eyeball, and I'm doing a contour line of the outsides of that eye. I'm looking at the nose and where the cracks and crevices are, and then I'm translating that to a line on the page. Same thing with this eyeball. As I'm moving around the page, I'm really looking at the lines. I'm also looking now at the shapes and areas of shadow. So it's those tonal values. I'm mapping those out a little bit, and you can see here, I'm also going in and starting my shading. So I'm just using lines overlapping and next to each other to begin that shadow work. So the cross-hatching is a way of mark making. There are different methods of cross-hatching. I've talked about this in other videos before, so I'm not going to go in depth into it here. But all of this is helping me develop skill in translating that artist's sight of how I see the world into a two-dimensional way. And even though I am using a ballpoint pen to do this, what I'm doing is developing the ability to translate through my hand to the page the lines of the world around me. So they help me record my artist's state of vision, my artist's sight, onto the page. They assist in learning the ins and outs of a particular material. So sometimes when I sketch, I use a material that I might do a more finished artwork with. So I might be using watercolor to do a sketch in, and that helps me learn that material really, really well. I like to compare it to other materials. So I relate, like, the ballpoint pen is a great tool because you can get a variety of different marks from it depending on the pressure you use. So with this pen, I can get a very light gray line, or I can get a really thick black line. I can get a lot of ink on the page because if I push down on it. If I use very light pressure, I get a lighter black line and broken black line. So to me, that translates really well to pencil. It looks a lot like pencil. Also, it has similarities to a dip pen. Not in terms of like the waveriness of the line, but in how I use it, the cross hatching. Um, Brush pens translate really well to the use of watercolor and gouache, because with the brush pen, I'm still looking at cross hatching, but I'm also looking at how I paint onto the page with the brush of that pen. And you overlap colors with the brush pens. You are color mixing on the page instead of on a palette. And then, allowing the transparent colors of the brush pens to show through one another. So you're really doing a lot of color theory work there, as well as looking at the line, color, shape, and tonal values of the world around you. And that translates really, really well to watercolor, with the exception that with watercolor, you can mix on your palette to get your different colors, or you can mix on the page. So, everyone has different techniques, but really for me, what I'm doing, particularly in this page, as I'm practicing several faces on the page, I am really honing in on my artist sight. I am looking closely at the page. I'm also like coming in now with the correction pen to bring back the highlights that you can't get on a toned page. You really gotta go back in with something that's white to capture those highlights, because that toned page is not gonna give it for you. And any drawing exercise is really only as effective as the time you give it and the effort you give it. And there are videos you can go back in time, and you can look at some of my very early portrait sketches, and you can see how far I've come. Part of that is because I draw faces on a regular basis now. I practice this. I've been, I don't do these daily anymore, but I do practice drawing faces on the regular. I've developed this skill over time. This is not something like I had a natural skill at. My first drawings of faces were terrible, but I practiced to get here. All right. So with that, thanks for listening to me blather on about artist sight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being here and checking out my videos. If you feel so inclined, you can give it a thumbs up, a like. You can share it with someone who you think might enjoy this. If you really like what I've done here, head on over to my Ko-fi page and buy me a cup of coffee. that allows me to buy more materials and support the channel. And so, with that, I'm just going to say thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye.